Well, thank you so much for having me this morning. It's certainly my hope that they will be exposed and they will be held accountable. This is something that's very important for Americans to understand how these NGOs have been working. They've been working behind the scenes. They've been working in ways and aiding and abetting what the real motivation of the previous White House, the Biden administration, wanted to do. And they were certainly right there aiding and abetting them in getting these folks all across the country. So I think there's a lot more information that we've got to glean. I think that the American people want to know these facts. And I think that ultimately we've got to find ways that they can be brought to justice and they can be held accountable for the actions that they've taken.
Yeah. Congressman, let's move to the D.C. crackdown by the Trump administration. President Trump says he wants to go through Congress to extend the administration's control over D.C. for more than that 30 days. But he's also floated the idea that he may bypass Congress on this. Take a look at this.
Well, if it's a national emergency, we can do it without Congress, but we expect to be to Congress before Congress very quickly. And again, we think the Democrats will not do anything to stop crime, but we think the Republicans will do it almost unanimously. So we're going to need a crime bill that we're going to be putting in, and it's going to pertain initially to D.C. It's almost, we're going to use it as a very positive example, and we're going to be asking for extensions on that, long-term extensions, because you can't have 30 days. 30 days that's by the time you do it. We're going to have this in good shape. And don't forget, in the border, everyone said it would take years and you'd have to go back to Congress. I never went to Congress for anything. I just said, close the border. And they closed the border. And that was the end of it. I didn't go back to Congress. We're going to do this very quickly, but we're going to want extensions. I don't want to call national emergency. If I have to, I will. But I think the Republicans in Congress will approve this pretty much unanimously.
Do you know what he's referring to exactly? I'm still trying to figure it out. I mean, I've looked at the 1973 Home Rule Act. I don't see anywhere where he can bypass Congress unless he's thinking of something else from a national emergency standpoint. But help me out there.
Yeah, I'm not real sure either on that, except the fact that, to his point of a bill is actually already been filed by Representative Ogles. I'm a co-sponsor of that, which is dealing with the home rule situation in Washington, D.C. And I think it's important. But listen, what the president has done here, we've already seen in the first 48 to 72 hours of the success that is already happening in D.C. I think I heard late last night as many as over 100 arrests had already taken place. And we're dealing with a situation in D.C., our nation's capital, where we have to clean up those streets. And you even had leaders, even the mayor herself in the initial response was saying very clearly that, while she had concerns, she certainly wanted to cooperate with the White House and the steps that were being taken. So you listen to the police union chief talking about that this is something that would be helpful. I think all in all, when we look at the realities of what's going on in D.C., I've just been there 8 months. I'm a freshman in Congress, but I can tell you in those 8 months, we watched what happened in May when those two young students or two young people that were at the Israeli embassy were mowed down in cold blood. A month later, we see one of our colleagues had an intern that was caught in crossfire, ended up getting shot and killed. And then, of course, we all just saw in the last couple of weeks what happened to one of the former employees of Doge that was trying to prevent a carjacking and got beaten up by thugs. So the president has recognized that our nation's capital needs to be more than this. And all of us recognize that the soft on crime policies in many of our metropolitan areas led by Democrats has been disastrous. And this is an opportunity in our nation's capital where we have opportunity for federal input to step in a big way and demonstrate how it can be done. So this bill has been introduced, as I mentioned, by Andy Ogles. And I think that several folks are now coming on board. I know Byron Donalds and some others are co-sponsoring as well, and we'll see where that goes.
Congressman, before we let you go, I want to talk about your recent visit to Israel. What's your sense of progress being made in the war there between Israel and Hamas? And what's your sense of what's happening on the ground?
Well, I've got to tell you, it was a gut-wrenching experience, to be honest with you. We went to the areas where on October 7th, 2023, Israel faced situations that really more Israelis killed than ever since the Holocaust. And I think that really when we watched those situations, those scenes, talked with people on the ground, understood better what happened that day, had an opportunity to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu, I do think that there's still some tough decisions that are being made. Actions are beginning to move forward. They want to finish this war, and they need to finish this war. They are deeply concerned for the hostages, for their families, and trying to figure out what is the best way to approach this. I'll tell you what I'm praying. I'm praying that God intervenes and there's some supernatural movements of God that lead to rescues as the military finishes this war and finishes this job, and that God works and that we see some of those hostages brought out alive. That's my prayer. But I do think the Prime Minister has a plan where Israel goes in. They don't want to have a long-term occupation of Gaza, but are looking for willing partners, maybe some of the countries that are part of the Abraham Accords, to provide a peacekeeping force that would be able to go into Gaza. But I promise you, Hamas cannot be allowed to remain in any way, shape, or form in that area. And if anybody has seen firsthand the atrocities that occurred that day, they would understand the passion in my voice when I say that.
Amen.
Congressman Harris, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.